Cadence should honestly be one of the mascots of the franchise. After all, he's the reason Nate even gets the yokai watch. He finds the Glunks kid on Mount Wildwood and it turns out to be Cadin. It's the first yokai he befriends and all. Then he gets one of the coolest looking evolutions in the entirety of Yokai Watch 1, Cadable. I don't know what it is about his design that just does it for me. He looks like what Cadin should become, and he's probably the best level up evolution in all of Yokai Watch 1, in terms of transitioning from one design to another. Finally, they gave him a really nice coloured rare yokai form in Cincada, whose colours are much superior to Cadable's in my opinion. How did they fare in the competitive scene? Let's get into that. Let's start with Cadable, because he probably sees the least use out of the three. Cadin has pretty much the exact same stat spread and a more offensive build, while Cincada has better stats while having the same moveset. Cincada is literally just a stronger Cadable in every way, even at B rank, so there's really no point talking about him. Cadin is probably the most different of the three. His skill, first of all, which he shares with Cadable, very rarely does anything. The only wind attackers you see commonly are Tengu and Asian Spectre, so it's a pretty unimportant factor. Aside from this, there aren't a lot of positive things to say about Cadin. His speed and move time are way above average, and his strength is over 100, but his moveset is nothing too impressive. Stepping Slice is your standard run-of-the-mill physical attack, no frills. His Inspirit doesn't amount to much, considering in this game a 10% boost for anything other than all stats doesn't really do much. Cadable has this Inspirit as well, and it's even more useless on him because of his ultimate. Cadable's and Cincada's ultimates are both a 20% speed boost to your actives. We'll go more depth in this later. Cadence's ultimate is a 300 base power physical hit, sure, but it only hits the front row. This is in my opinion the hardest zone to ultimate bait into. Blowaway Soul knocks yokai backwards, so it's a lot more consistent lining up back rows ultimates, even though they cover the same number of tiles and have usually the same base power. Front rows only have two consistent ways to bait yokai into them. You could use ultimates that hit the 6 back tiles such as Phoenixes, or you could use ultimates like Floctopuses that hit all opponents and bring them a tile forward. The latter is a lot less reliable as they could easily just move back, but this does disrupt their move cooldown, so it can combo into other ultimates. This really doesn't help in Caden's case though. This was a huge nerf from 2, since he could just fire it off without worrying about the minute details. A lot of ultimate spammers were hit hard in the transition. As a ultimate spammer in 3, you either want 2 item slots so you can run Charge Soul and Stealth Soul or whatever else you want, for example Face Off and Lion, a ultimate that doesn't worry about grid positioning, for example Squeaky or Hazard Setters, or boosting ultimate for your actives, for example Samaril and the Pelican. Cadin has none of these things. The only qualities keeping him from being one of the worst ultimate spammers in the game are his rank and the base power of this ultimate. Front row ultimates do have one advantage in that they can force breaking a safe column. A safe column is a 3 yokai long vertical link with a tank at the front. A front row ultimate could force the tank to move out of the way or take big damage. Overall though, it's not a very big advantage, and I still recommend using any of the previously mentioned ultimate spammers over Cadin in Yokai Watch 3. But how does this evolution's recolor do? Cincada is pretty different to Cadin. His ultimate boosts all ally speed by 20%. This is decent support in its own, but can actually contribute well to a certain gimmick team archetype, Evasion. Speed is a contributing factor to whether or not a move hits. Faster yokai dodge hits you more easily and also have better accuracy, while slower yokai are the opposite. The move itself also has its own accuracy value, but unlike the base power, it's not directly told you in the game. The extra speed is often a trade-off for having less bulk. There is of course a middle ground with yokai like Punching Baguette, where they have good speed and defense. Cincada boosting speed for allies means they get better accuracy and evasion. This doesn't really matter for Cincada since his skill gives him perfect accuracy, and you generally want him behind a tank so the extra evasion won't come in handy. This isn't very important for the majority of yokai either, but you can make a pretty funny gimmick out of this by using Cheek Squeak to lower accuracy, a yokai like Dumbcap with heightened evasion due to their skill, and maybe even a Charming Unity. Dumbcap can then get the speed boost off Cincada, and then hold an item such as a Chimera Soul for even more accuracy cheese. This strategy is easily shut down by yokai like Grumpos or even Cincada himself because they bypass accuracy, but if they don't have any counters it can be pretty funny watching all their attacks miss. Cincada doesn't really need to use his ultimate outside of this specific archetype though. It can be helpful if the rest of your team is slow though. For his attacking potential, his strength stat is about 20 points better than Cadence, but his move timer is 1 turn higher. This is a pretty good trade-off though, as they actually gave him a good skill that does something. Not having to worry about your attacks missing is a pretty nice quality, even if it doesn't really do anything for you damage-wise. It's part of the reason Frostdale was so good in 2 after all. The problem with Cincada is that he just doesn't have the strength to be a meta threat. There is one more thing going for him though, and that's the fact that he's B rank. Strong, low-rank attackers are not hard to find, but Cincada could potentially fit into a charming unity. For attackers, the best tribe you can be is Brave and Mysterious, since those are the units that actually boost your damage, but charming can still be nice so you can outspeed your opponent. Outspeeding your opponent not only gives you the chance to hit first, it also gives you time to quickly move your yokai around the board at the start of the game. If your yokai outspeeds at the start of the game, you can afford to have a frail charged soul user like Squeaky at the front, and speed moving back behind your tank before your attacker finishes their turn. Charming doesn't have the greatest ultimate spammers, but you can still make use of the unity, then have a different tribe charged soul user on the same team. It takes a bit more effort in team building, but can still work decently since tribe unities will pick the whole team in 3. Cincada is really fast as it is, and with a charming unity he can outspeed most of the game. This allows him to be a decent fast offensive threat if you're tight on rank slots. The CADIN line has drawn 10 pages of script out of me, so I think it's appropriate to end it here. What do you think of CADIN and his two big bros? Let me know in the comments, and have a good day.